And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We are here today to talk about Austin FC. And we're here with none other than Zach from the North End podcast. I want to make sure I got that right because
You got it.
I've there are some that are so easy they're easy to mix up. So I want to make sure I got that right before we went in. But Zach, thanks so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. I appreciate you guys having me. Fresh off day one of the Coachella Invitational out there in California, watching some preseason matches today, following along with my beloved Austin FC through Twitter threads and some other supporters who are out there. So 17 days away from almost everybody's opener, right? I know we've got that early Miami RSL match on a Wednesday to kick off the season, but it's so close we can almost taste it. I'm pumped.
No better way to kick off a league
Yep,
season than
I
on a
think that is
Wednesday.
that's so true. Um, the that's some real MLS as we say MLS sicko there following along with
Mhm.
preseason on a Twitter feed is exactly how that should go. So we're really happy you're here. Thanks so much for being here. And as you've already heard, my co-host Connor here is here as well. Connor, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, I will apologize in advance for those on the YouTube stream. For my setup, we have had some technical difficulties and had to adjust. So we will be back to your regularly scheduled clear picture and scarf wall very, very soon. Speaking of scarf wall, every episode we start off with a scarf of the week. Zach, I see you got some behind you. Do you have something with you that you want to show as well, or what do you got today?
I don't. I've got one here. If I can spin around. Let's see which
Ooh.
one this is. This is the Los Verdes. So we've got a couple supporters groups down here in Austin, but this was the Los Verdes, I believe last year, 2023. And then on the other side, you've got your Daniel Johnston, the I love you so much. I don't know if you guys have ever been down to Austin. Famous artist down here, famous mural that says I love you so much, and we sing his song True Love Will Find You in the End at the end of every match. So there's a scarf for you.
Elite.
That was sick.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We were talking about it before, but everybody who's come on here so far, absolute 10 out of 10 banger scarves. Like,
Yeah.
I've got 70 scarves, and I don't think any of them who've seen this series. So very, very awesome. Love it. Connor, what are you rocking?
So I don't have an Austin scarf, and Austin fans are gonna have to hear me out on this one because
Oh no.
it's I only realized right as we started that it's probably not the best choice of scarf, but it alludes to a player that I want to talk about during this episode. So
Okay.
it is a Dallas scarf.
Oh God. Oh yeah.
I know, but it was as relevant as I could get with one of the players that I wanted to talk about, and it definitely is spoiling things for those who were in the know during the off season. But I will be talking about. Oh, you know what? I just realized I'm actually not talking about someone from Dallas anymore. I swapped it.
Boo.
That was a bad choice. Then I should have got my Seattle scarf. At least it would have been green.
Well, I have two of the three Texas scarves, and was smart enough not to bring either of them on because I know that that's a no go.
Yeah.
But because of that, and I didn't have any real connection to it outside of maybe Matt Hedges TFC, but that's not exciting. I kept the color scheme the same and went with see if the blurred vision will end up here.
You could kind of see through it.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went with the Celtic. It was green enough. But Austin is definitely on the list for the next scarf up. I think you guys have some really great. I love the colors. The Los Verdes scarf just looked absolutely sick. So definitely on the list now to become the next one in.
Yeah, love it. Wish we could meet next Wednesday out there in California for the preseason match. We could do a little swappity do out there. I know we played up in your neck of the woods late last season. But yeah, we'll have to get that on the docket in the years to come.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we've been talking about doing a stadium tour here for a couple years now. So Texas is always a good one. You can knock out 3 in a weekend or two. So definitely something that we could look at here. But as much as people probably want to hear about our plans for our eventual stadium tour, I think they are here more or less to talk Austin FC's 2024 year. It's the 4th full season with Josh Wolf at the helm after taking charge and staying in charge of the side in 2021. They finished 12th in the West last season, 25th overall, 34 points, 10 wins, 15 losses, 9 draws, and they did miss the playoffs. I guess the question that I have is just what is it like I mean, obviously there's excitement going into the start of the year, but what are the other feelings like? Is it cautious? Are we timid? Are we, all guns blazing? Like what's it feeling like now?
I think the overall temperature of the fan base is pretty cool at this point, especially compared to coming into the 2023 season this time last year, where Austin's coming off 2nd seed in the West, Western Conference final appearance against LAFC, right? Bringing back a bunch of players, couple new additions, and then things fall apart. Like you mentioned, you read off the record, the points, missing the playoffs, especially when you add 9 seeds, getting 8-9, getting into that wild card game. I think most fans around the league would say it's pretty unacceptable to miss the playoffs, at least the wild card match in this league. So a lot of angry fans last year, disappointed, unsatisfied, and who could really blame them with the disparity between 2022 and 2023. I do personally give a lot of leeway to the team as a whole, whether it's the players or the coaching staff, based on what they went through last year, whether it was the litany of injuries that piled up, starting 7 minutes into that first match against St. Louis City, where Julio Cascante goes down, he misses the first 8 weeks, and things just kind of snowballed from there. Driussi missed extended time, Diego Fagundes missed extended time, then ended up getting traded, Leo Väisänen tore his ACL, the list goes on. We were also dealing with the fallout from the Claudio Reyna blackmail situation, and that put Sean Rubio, who was the director of player personnel at the time, now in Toronto, or back in Toronto, I should say, and Josh Wolf into interim positions trying to play general manager. And that did not go well either. So now we've got Rodolfo Borrell in there. Josh Wolf can focus on being a young, still inexperienced head coach with, by Borrell's own admission, still has a lot to learn. I think overall, I'm personally a little bit more optimistic on the season. I have Austin hovering around the 7-8 range right now. But a lot can go wrong, as last season, showed. And I think probably the fan base is probably 50-50 in terms of we'll be okay this year, we'll be a little bit improved, or the sky is still falling. This is a complete rebuild year and the team is going to miss the playoffs again. I think that the fan base is united in nobody has delusions of grandeur where this team is going to end up with a top 4 seed in the West. But I would just like to see them take the incremental bump back into a playoff position and really positioning themselves for a 2025 where, looking at Austin's cap sheet, they're going to have a lot of space to maneuver between now and then.
I think you hit a lot of good points and a lot of points that we're still going to cover later in the series. One of them being your coach, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's start on a little bit of a positive note.
Sure.
Couple of new faces in the door. Who do you think is the best addition they've made so far?
I would have had a different answer 48 hours ago. It's Diego Rubio for me now, especially with, like, the talent is one thing, obviously, career high 16 goals there, Colorado Rapids record in 22, dealt with multiple injuries, knee procedure right before the season started last year, then back issues, ankle issues, never really got going with Colorado. So we know the talent is there. He's getting up there in age, as, typical Austin striker profile has been through the first 3+ seasons here. but he certainly raises the floor. Having him next to Giassi Zardes, again, another aging striker, makes me feel a little bit better about the overall floor of this team. And then Jeff Carlisle reported that this deal, which was a 1+1, so if it doesn't work out, see ya, Diego. 350K. That is amazing business in my book. So he leaped over Hodder Obrian. They grabbed him in the reentry draft. That would have been my answer 2 days ago. I think the Diego Rubio signing is some magic worked by Rodolfo Borrell here.
Connor, I'm going to send this over to you because I think this is where you were alluding to your scarf mishap.
Yeah, so I'm basically in the exact same boat where my scarf was supposed to be for Obrian because he was going to also be my top pick. But in the same fashion, I've also decided to go with Diego Rubio. And basically for the exact same reasons. I mean, there's not a ton of options at the striker position right now. And quite frankly, Zardes just didn't really get the job done last season. So definitely needed somebody else there to at least challenge for the spot or potentially just take it over outright if Zardes is going to struggle again this season. And I think Diego Rubio is a great choice to do it. Last season, he just didn't get a ton of minutes. I think was battling a lot of injuries and stuff. And I mean, we saw what he could do the season prior to that. If he can get some part of that 2022 Colorado season going in him with Austin, that's going to exponentially help that attack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here at the moves in. You've got a backup to maybe a third string goalkeeper. You've got a 17-year-old attacking midfielder with all the promise in the world, but probably not ready for the first team just yet. You've got a left back who's not so proven. You've got Obrian, and then you've got Rubio. So I'll shed a little bit of light on Obrian, considering we've hit the Diego Rubio nail on the head here. I'm a big fan of the move. I think it's a really, really ambitious move for a team that realized some of their struggles last year. They took a downturn in their attacking production in 2023. From my notes, they dropped over 6 expected goals from 2022, which whether they were overperforming in 2022, underperforming in 2023, maybe somewhere in the middle, that's still a massive change, right? So, and you lost Diego Fagundes in the process, who had 10 goal contributions in 29 appearances. I think Obrian has the tools to fit into this system, and he will contribute right away. So, pairing him, and again, whatever the shape ends up being, pairing him with players like Driussi, players like Zardes, players like Rubio, I think he will do a lot of service into the box. I think he'll get a ton of chances created from wide play. And I think that players like Zardes and players like Rubio are going to feast off of his service. So I like the move. I think I'm really excited for it. And I would agree with you that Diego Rubio also up there. But, we've talked about him. So we'll talk about Obrian too. So we don't leave him out.
Yeah, I think with Obrian, the first thing that strikes me, especially as like watching him and some of those other Dallas guys at times, especially 2021, rip Austin's back line apart. The speed that Obrian brings is something that Austin doesn't really have outside of a guy like John Gallagher, who of course is now a converted fullback, made All-Star last year. He's been great, but taking his speed away from that front line definitely has hurt Austin. Like, to me, both from the eye test and statistically, the offense creates a ton of chances. They were top 5 in chances created last year. If you're looking at FOTMob stats from the regular season, they count postseason stats, so they're a little wonky now, but the team was also 4th in big chances missed. So it's about, like you guys mentioned, Giassi Zardes being able to get on the end of some of that service from both Obrian and Rigoni. I think Diego Rubio brings a little bit more of that playmaking, right? He can kind of play as that second forward or a second 10, like very excited about him in the mix up front. Obrian, like I think 97th percentile in terms of offside calls last year or the last 2 years. I forget off the top of my head. I'm fine with that, man. We need to be able to put pressure on opposing back line. So again, like I said, until Rubio was announced on Monday, Obrian to me was the clear top acquisition of the offseason, getting him in the re-entry process.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. I think those are obviously the two biggest of the players in. Like we mentioned, not too many there. Curious to hear what you think though regarding their biggest loss, players that they will be missing next season.
I mean, look, man, Diego Fagundes had a career year in 2022. He was not the same last year, whether it was in Austin or out with the Galaxy after the trade. That doesn't mean that this team wasn't hurting without, like, we were hurting with him because of how much we counted on his production, his chance creation. Like, he had a magical 2022, not so in 2023. I think that is still a big loss, even though it was a mid-season move in during the league's cup break last year. Outside of that, man, a lot of the subtractions I think could qualify as like addition by subtraction. A lot of guys who were playing, for lack of a better term, some empty minutes, at least in terms of their production. Maxi Urruti, again, Diego Rubio's reportedly half the price of what Maxi Urruti was last year. I love that. Rodney Redis, who was the club's first ever signing, he had his most productive year with the club in 2023. It was 1 goal, fellas, in league play. So, like, getting him out of there, replacing him with Obrian minutes, with maybe CJ Fodre, the club's GA super draft pick coming into 2023, spent most of his year with Austin FC2 last year. The next pro champions, they've got some nice players down there, including Fodre. You mentioned Micah Burton. So I don't really have too many guys that I was sad to see go from a soccer standpoint. Now, maybe a vibe standpoint, that fan connection that you have with some of these guys, sure, especially Diego Fagundes. But I think ultimately, I don't want to rehash the past, at least the 2023 version of Austin FC, because it was not good in almost all aspects. So let's continue to go through this rebuild process.
I like it. I think you're spot on, right? I don't think there's a ton of players that were giving you really meaningful minutes that you're going to be worried about losing. But I'll let Connor go first and let me know what his biggest loss is. I think I could see where he's going to go with it. I can
Oh,
read his
do you
mind.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Andrew said, not a huge list to choose from here. I went with Nick Lima. I
Ding ding.
think
Got him.
I think I think he was the most involved player that they lost during this winter. And maybe his time in Austin wasn't at his best level that we saw when he was in San Jose, but I still think he's a good MLS right back. He's versatile in the back line, and I think he could put in a decent shift when he's called upon. Not to mention, I think the only other options at right back right now are John Gallagher, who's a great option. Just I think he provides a lot in the attack, not as much in the defense. And then it is Jimenez, who I just think isn't really a main part of the team. So I guess at the moment, I feel like there might be a hole in terms of defensive duties from a right back perspective. So with that, I ended up going with Lima. Not to mention, I think Lima also had the most minutes out of anybody that left this winter. I think I had a number before.
That sounds
Yeah, about
right.
like 2,400 minutes. So he played a lot for them. So that's minutes that somebody else on the team is now going to have to pick up.
Yeah, I would, if I could editorialize on that a little bit.
Hmm.
Not countering at all the importance of Nick Lima, minutes eater at worst. Workman, I think, is how I would describe him. Like, I will never forget the job he did on Gareth Bale in the home match against LAFC in 2022. Maybe the high point for Austin FC fans. You always knew you were going to get solid shifts, like you mentioned, out of Nick Lima. I think some of that minutes ceiling was achieved because some of the depth was guys like you mentioned, Hector Jimenez, who I love Hector, for all intents and purposes, a player coach at this point. Jean Kolmanich, one of the lone remaining U22 player on the roster, tore his ACL early last year. So that forced both Gallagher and Lima to play a lot more, not get as much rotation as they would if the depth chart was healthy. So I'm in agreement. I think that's a great shout on Lima being a significant loss that has not been replaced yet. word here is that Austin will be bringing in Mikel Dessler from Toulouse in the summer window on a free. I'm hoping that happens. Maybe they can sneak him in here on a little 6-month loan before officially signing him, but that would be a huge boost to the fullback depth chart here in Austin.
Yeah, and I would agree with what Connor said and kind of echo a lot of his things, but to give a different approach to it, not somebody I think you'll feel all the the biggest loss, but Will Bruin as a super sub has always been my guy. I mean I've been watching him for years now, so again, you mentioned not a ton of minutes, not a ton of impact, but to know that you had somebody like him on the bench whenever whenever you just need to throw things forward and see what happens, you might miss that a little bit, but hopefully you're not in too many of those scenarios this year.
100%. Like when I brought up guys that I would certainly miss from like a fan standpoint, Will Bruin was at the top of my mind. We loved Will Bruin in Austin. Always came in, busted his butt. And at the end of the year, he said himself coming into the year, I cannot play more than 45 minutes. He was getting starts at the end of the year just to illustrate how bad, how thin things were here in Central Texas down the stretch last year. I do know that Will Bruin is still in the Austin area. I don't think he's going to be playing this year. Hasn't officially announced his retirement, but he's still in the mix down here. So hopefully we'll see Will Bruin in some capacity still around the club.
Yeah, whether he's working with the front office, or heck, even if he's showing up to the supporters section, right? Go on out
Yeah,
and be a
we
part of
take
what
that.
you got. With the players leaving and new roles being I'll use the term being given out by the coaches. Who's the player that we want to watch that might break out this year in Austin?
Well, there's two names, and I don't think there's any hot takes here from me. Owen Wolff, I would list just because he's still a teenager this entire year, was on the MLS 22 under 22 list. Very talented young player. But I think the more important young player that needs to take a leap, both for himself as a player and his next steps in his career and the team, is Danny Pereira. First overall pick in the 2021 Super Draft by Austin. Got benched near the end of the year due to like disciplinary things. He got a very detrimental red card at Dallas in August last year. I believe led the team in yellows last year, but number one, there's no doubting this kid's talent. He's fiery. He's amazing with the ball at his feet. It is very hard to take the ball off young Danny there. A lot of Austin FC fans have been calling for a while now for him and Alex Ring, former captain of the team. That's a whole nother can of worms we could get into. A lot of fans have been calling for Danny to be more of that box-to-box guy and Alex Ring to sit back, more, playing kind of the six there, cleaning things up behind everybody in front of him. We've actually seen that multiple times throughout the first 4 preseason matches this year. Danny Pereira actually scored the team's lone goal in their first preseason exhibition out in St. Petersburg a few weeks back. So there's a lot of hope amongst the fans, especially the diehard Pereira stands, if you will, that we're going to see Danny Pereira more active in the attacking third this year. And what he does with that opportunity, like I said earlier, is going to dictate, I think, the ceiling of this team this year. Again, keeping expectations in check, but also dictate his next move and just how high he can go in the next couple years.
Yeah, that's a really interesting note on the Ring Pereira kind of duality there, because I have always thought Alex Ring was a pure 6.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought he was a destroyer, and people were, when he was at New York City, I was like, oh my God, look at all the goals he's scoring. New York City's field is the size of my office. Like he picked up the ball, he could score from wherever he wants, right? and when he went into Austin, he still showed that he could attack well in that first year. But as the years went on, the production, it seemed from the outside, dropped off a little bit year after year. And usually what you see happen then is you fall deeper back in line, right? You fall from a 10 to an 8, an 8 to a 6 maybe even to a 5, right? And and I know he's played there at times as well as a center back, but I think that he would be best served doing just exactly what you just said, winning the ball, giving it up, and letting somebody like Danny Pereira, who's very good on the ball, keeping the ball very well, and makes good decisions, to move into the next line and make the decision on where the ball is going to go next. Because then you combine him with somebody like Sebastian Driussi, and now you've got a lot of creativity. Where in Alex Ring, I think he's a little bit more, again, from the outside looking in, he's a little bit less creative and a little bit more, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to beat you with whatever I've got, and I'm going to give it to whoever I can see. Where the others can maybe make things happen. Connor, you're your breakout player. Who are you watching this year?
So my guy was actually mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, but I've gone with Micah Burton, the 17-year-old. I'm looking at the roster on Transfer Market, and Transfer Market is not always perfect, but when I'm looking through, there's only two players on the roster listed at the number 10 spot, and I'm sure there's some guys that could be moved around and whatnot. But you have obviously the star of the team, Sebastian Driussi, and then it's Micah Burton. So if that is the case, and they decide to give Burton a shot, he could be the guy to back up Driussi this year. And if that's the case, I could see him getting decent minutes. I don't think he'd be an out and out starter, nor do I think he may not be ready for that at 17, but if he can get decent rotational minutes, even if it's just like 500 minutes this year, I think that would be massive for him. I think it would really raise his stock, kind of put his name on the Austin market. And I think he's got the talent to do so. I mean, he's a member of the US youth national team, so the quality's definitely there. So I think if he can get some game time this year with the amount of competitions MLS clubs are in, I think that would be a huge step forward for him.
Man, I love, like, I with all my heart want to join the Micah Burton parade here with you. I have to pump the brakes just a little bit, and it's not because I don't believe in the kid's talent. Reading between the lines from both Burrell's press conferences and then most recently Josh Wolf after Burton signed that deal a few weeks ago, I think he spends the vast majority of his time down with the next pro team this year. You mentioned, rightfully so, Transfer Market, not always the most accurate. You will see Owen Wolf back up Driussi at the 10 there. I think you will probably see some Diego Rubio minutes there as well. And they've also got a guy, I think the international spot is probably the biggest hurdle to MLS Next Pro Cup MVP Valentin Noel, former Pitt Panther, getting a first team deal. We'll see if that materializes. He has 2 goals in the preseason, leading the team so far through 4 matches. So I don't think 2024 is the year for Micah, but you are absolutely spot on, Connor, that is a kid that everybody should be watching. And I was ecstatic when the team locked him up for 5 years on that supplemental roster. He, like you said, he definitely has the talent to make an imprint in the league.
I'm just ahead of my time.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at this guy. Yeah, Connor, I think you're spot on there. I agree, Zach, as well. From what I was reading, it looks like he's an Austin 2 guy for at least the year. But as you mentioned, locking him up for 5 and knowing that the next guy up is going to be this kid, I think it shows that the future's bright. Another guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and this may be just because preseason, from what I'm seeing, is leading me down the wrong direction, but I mean, you can tell me I'm wrong. CJ Fodry has been getting a lot of preseason minutes in the attacking roles this season. And again, looking at Transfer Market, which, as we've already discussed, is not super spot on.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of, like, you look at certain teams, and I love bringing this up. Like New York City has 9 wingers right now, 9 of them. I think Austin officially has 3 or 4. Like, depending on where you play certain people, like, there is a chance that he comes in and plays sub minutes or reserve minutes or what have you, where on other teams he just might not. So considering that they're giving him a legitimate run out and seeing what he can do against some of this preseason competition, I think it bodes pretty well to at least be somebody to keep an eye on this year. And again, if he can settle in and be a part of what they're doing, all the better. And then he's off the bench and he's getting bench minutes until he can become a starter.
I love the call on CJ there. You're spot on with the wing depth chart there. I think including Fodre, it's 4. It's him, it's Rigoni, it's Obrian, and it's Ethan Finley. Last year, Fodre injured in the preseason. I don't think he was ready for MLS minutes at the time anyways, but he really blossomed across the next pro season. When he was called up to the first team in like August, September, October, Austin FC2 took a noticeable dip in their results, and they had some other guys that were in and out there. But when he came back for that playoff run, that's what allowed Austin FC2 to get to that level where they cruised all the way to the championship, winning on the road over Crew 2. Unfortunately, in the last week, we were actually the ones on the North End podcast who broke the news to everybody that CJ got a knee injury. Luckily, not season ending. He did go on the trip with the team out to Coachella this week, did not play on Saturday, did not play today. So I imagine we haven't gotten an official diagnosis. I imagine it's sprain, bone bruise, something like that. Hopefully he's back in the coming weeks, because I agree, Andrew. Like, I think CJ could make a leap to where he is challenging for starts near the end of the season if he if he has another year where he improves so visibly as he did in 2023. This is a kid, again, like, he got the Generation Adidas tag from the league for a reason. There's a lot of upside there. Landon Donovan, former coach of his in USL for a year, talked the kid up. And of course, like, a good coach will do that, right? But this kid has the ceiling. I think he has the raw talent, and I think it's up to the player and this coaching staff in Austin to make sure that he reaches that ceiling. And like you mentioned, he could be a real piece.
Yeah, I'm real excited to see, because there are a lot of young guys on this roster that you may overlook because of some of the bigger names. So it'll be exciting to see how Josh Wolf uses them. But what I want to ask you is what you're asking of the team. So as we look through this season, what's the one question that's in the back of your mind that you're watching the games with this question in mind?
Man, there were so many issues last year. It is very tough to narrow it down. I think I will go with the defense, which has always been a sieve through the first 3 years. The first year, miserable, could not score. Year 2, we're on cloud 9 because we're still giving up a ton of goals, but we are outscoring teams. We're getting down 2-0, coming back and winning 4-3, what felt like once a month. That offensive magic, like I said, finishing those big chances that were created. I'm not so worried about the offense because the chances were still there. Got to improve on finishing. But defensively, the commitment as a team, all 11 guys going out there and doing their jobs, playing their roles on the defensive side of the ball, we have to see an improvement in that area. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest things I want to see out of this team from the coaching staff, being able to get these guys to a place where they have at least a respectable back line to the eye test, statistically, wherever you want to look. That has to improve for this team to take the next step, not just this year, but going forward. There has to be a bigger focus and more success on that end.
I like that because it leads into my question. So Connor, you're taking a back seat for this one. Sorry.
Fine.
You mentioned how you want to see what the coaching staff can do to get the team where they want to be, and my question, very simply, and it's one that a lot of people have asked. I believe Josh Wolf is the only coach of a team that did not make the playoffs, except for maybe Nick Cushing, who still has a job.
Yeah, sounds
Is he the right guy for the job? Can he get this done? Was 2023 more on Josh Wolf's decisions, or was it on the players being hurt and personnel and all the other factors that go into it? Can he, with the team at his hand, get them to where they need to be? That's kind of where I'm going with that.
Sure. I'll tell you this. You would find a lot of Austin fans that would, and no matter what happens in any game, whoever's available, whatever happens, always pointing their finger at Josh Wolf. Every fan base has a certain segment like that. That is not to absolve Josh Wolf of the faults that he does have. I'm not sure. We're not in locker rooms with these guys, with the coaches, with the teams. We don't know exactly what goes on behind closed doors. I don't think Josh Wolf has shown anything frontward facing to the public that gives me a ton of confidence that he is the best, like the most personable guy for the job. You have to be able to connect. Again, as a former college basketball coach, I think it is very important to be able to connect with your players on a personal level, make sure they don't just know, but they feel that you care about them as a coach. I don't know if he has achieved that. And look, man, when you're winning, a lot of those things can be overlooked. And also on the flip side, when everything is going wrong and you can't get right, things snowball. So if I have to point my finger last year at 2023 and say this is the one thing that negatively affected the outcome for Austin FC, it would be the injuries for me. But injuries are not part of your job as a coach in any sport, is to be able to adapt to what you have, the cards you're dealt, and roll with the punches. And I think it would be foolhardy of me to suggest that Josh Wolf did well in that area last year. I also don't think we should totally throw out 2022 because there's a lot of luck involved in any run like that to a team that had next to no expectations coming in. But this is still a coach that 18 months ago, less than that, was in the Western Conference Final. And I do think a lot of Austin FC fans discount that a little bit too much. I'm excited to see what he does this year, now being like, you see it, the pictures on the sideline at Coachella today. Rodolfo Borrell, less than 12 months ago, winning the treble next to Pep, right? Now he's standing over Josh Wolf's shoulder. So I'm excited at the prospect that Josh Wolf can improve as a coach kind of under the tutelage of a guy like Rodo. And if he's not the man for the job, man, Rodolfo Borrell will get Josh Wolf out of here probably before his contract is up. He'll be able to tell. So remains to be seen, but I would blame the injuries last year as the primary issue.
That's super interesting when you talk about how a coach can know the players and be personal with the players. You know, I'm at my C license now in the U.S. Soccer Pyramid, and they talk about all the steps of being a coach and what you have to do, right? And two of the big ones are leading the player, leading the team, and those two things are essentially solely just making sure you know what these players are, not as players but as people, and then knowing how those people work together in a group and how you can get those players to think on the same level. And I won't go any deeper than that because I've got a section on that in our last section here. Okay. So I'll throw it over to Connor and have him ask a question.
Yeah, thank you for graciously throwing it my way. My question for the team that I'll be keeping an eye on is, what does the mentality of this team look like? So if a bad loss happens this season, is there any threat of a here we go again?
Oh, yeah. So, dude, there was a threat, at least from the fan base for sure. Game 1. I mean, I'm looking at Minnesota right now. Reports out of there, Reynoso went down with a knee injury yesterday. I never wish an injury on anybody. I would take it if he has to sit out week 1. But that's just going to put even more pressure. We have a very passionate, very knowledgeable, locked-in fan base here in Austin. And it's not a fan base, not that other fan bases would, but the Austin fans are not going to settle for mediocrity. And it could go sideways, at least with the just kind of the feeling, the aura around the 2024 edition of Austin FC. It could be sour really quick, like quicker than either of you could imagine. In terms of the team, though, I think they have enough veterans who have been through the ups and downs here in Austin. Guys who have been in this locker room, who know what it's like, what they're trying to build here, that I hope there's a little bit more resiliency inside that locker room than, with the average Joes on the outside.
That's awesome. Yeah. So like I said, I have notes on that too, but it's in our last section. So the last section is, and it's very, very simple. Where is Austin FC finishing this year? And Zach, you kind of hinted at it beforehand, which is why at the top of the show, I said, You kind of hit on some points, but do you want to elaborate on it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that, like you mentioned, outside of the playoff picture, 39 points last year. I think that was 5 points off the wild card. I think it was 44 for the 8 and the 9. At home against Seattle, that game was stolen from Austin FC by the officiating crew. 2 goals, one that was proven offside, one that was proven to have crossed the line after the fact. They didn't catch it on VAR. So little bit, that can go both ways. If that breaks in the team's favor, there's 3 extra points. They gave up, I believe it was a league leading 18 goals from the 75th minute onward last year. If you can shore that up a little bit and turn one of those losses into a draw, one of those draws into a win, all of a sudden you would have found yourself in a wild card position last year. So all that being said, I've got the team, like I said earlier, 7 or 8 seed right now, and I am an eternal optimist. So I will put in the call 7 seed this year for Austin. I think still tempering expectations, but I think your average Austin fan might be a little bit more negative than that.
Send it over to Connor. Connor, what do you got?
I think I might be. I think I might be kind of in between the negative Austin fan and where you are. So I've gone for a range. Eventually, I will land on a spot for Austin. We'll do our predictions video somewhat down the line, but for now, I think I got them around the 8 to 11 range. So I think we'll see an improvement upon the team this year. So I definitely don't see them being in that 12 spot again. I think it's a fresh season. It's a new start. It's a reset from last year. There's still plenty of quality in this team, and I think they can take that step forward and get that spot in the playoffs. I think it's more like, in my opinion, I think it's more likely in the play-in spot, one of those 8-9 spots, or they just miss out on it. But I still think, regardless, it's going to be a step in a better direction this year.
Cool. So I get to be the bad guy. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. It's time for me to. I don't like this team. Let me rephrase that. I don't like this roster build. And I know that there are more moves coming, but I'm out here and I'm looking at 3 center backs, one of which is Matt Hedges, who I love to death, but I think is a bit past it for being a center back 3. Somebody who's going to be relied on for 15 to 20 appearances a season. I don't know if he's got it in him anymore. We talked about the right back situation. I think John Gallagher is phenomenal going forward, but he gets caught high often and they'll beat in behind. I think your defensive mids are solid, right? Pereira, you mentioned with the discipline is the word I'm looking for. The other thing, when I was looking, we were making a top 5 CDMs for the 2024 season. Who's coming in. Pereira's per 90 stats were low comparative to other midfielders. So, and that's the defensive stats. That's the ball winning stats, which if they're still going to use him as a 6 instead of an 8, that might come back to bite them. Wingers, like I said, I like Obrian. I just don't feel as confident in this group. I think Diego Rubio and Zardes are good, solid attacking options. But 32 and 30, Diego Rubio coming off massive injury, Gyasi Zardes underperforming. Personally, I think the ceiling for this team is the play-in game. So I've got them in a range between like 9 and 12. That being said, with the group that they have coming up as the next group, I think the future is still bright, but I'm not confident in this season. 1, because as I just mentioned, the roster build. 2, I was talking about before, and you were mentioning with Josh Wolf and some of the problems that he has. I have some doubts as an outsider of if the players have trust in him 100%. You'll go in front of the media and you'll back your coach every step of the way, or you should, right? That's the way it should go. But I'm concerned that there are people in there who think that he's not right for the job. And when you have that, even if you have an inkling of that thought in your head, you don't ever give your full 100%, whether you think you are or not. So I think they struggle this year. I think they learn a lot, and I think they come back stronger in 25. But I'm not thrilled with this roster.
I think that's both of those. I think are very, very fair shouts. It could go sideways, like I mentioned, very quick, and not just with the fans, right? I do think summer window could be big for them. They have a very simple buy down Alex Ring. They only have one U22, can finally get that full third DP in there if they want to make a splash this summer. Mentioned the next winter window. They have a crap ton of cap space, a lot of contracts that can come off the books. But in terms of both of y'all's predictions, I think you're probably pretty spot on. Like I mentioned, I am very optimistic, especially when the beginning of the season is nigh. I will say though, I have heard, especially on Extra Time, wooden spoon shouts for this team. I think that's ridiculous, barring another catastrophic season with injuries. I think the talent floor in this team is a little bit too high compared to some of the other bottom feeders in MLS. I would be shocked if this team ended up with the spoon. And again, maybe that's just because I'm an Austin fan and I don't want to ever think about that, but I think that is a step too far. So I'm glad neither of you went that low.
Yeah, I agree. I think wooden spoon would be quite a crazy shout. I mean, Sebastian Driussi didn't hit the levels that he did 2 years ago, but that guy is just too good to have his team be wooden spoon.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not even that low on them. I'm an eternal pessimist.
The way you were talking about it, I thought you were about to put them at wooden spoon. You were like pointing out every bad thing about the roster, and then you were like, "Oh, 9 to 12."
Well, yeah, because I just spent the whole time talking about a bunch of the good things on the roster. So you got to balance it out. You can't be happy all the time.
Sure.
What we can be happy with is this interview. This was phenomenal, Zach. Thank you so much for your time chatting Austin FC with us.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you guys having me. It was great to meet Andrew, Connor. Good luck the rest of the way. I know you guys are ripping through these previews. I've been checking some of them out. So hopefully everybody's going to tune in to all these, because the fan media around this league is one of my favorite things about kind of, being engulfed in this MLS culture over the last few years here. So cheers to you guys. Keep fighting the good fight. And thanks again for having me on.
Couldn't agree with you more. I love the fan media. I love taking in all the pods that I can, and really, really excited to keep on. I believe you are 11 or 12 of 29, so
Nice.
We're almost halfway there. So really appreciate your time. We want to give you a little bit of time here to plug your socials, let people know where to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter at the North End Pod, Instagram at the North End Podcast, Threads North End Podcast, YouTube at the North End Pod, North End Podcast. We're once a week in the off seasons. We are twice a week in season. And since we started in early August of 2022, never missed a week, gentlemen. We have been through 2 bouts of COVID, including last week. We battle through, we are there for the people, and definitely not because we're 2 lunatics who can't get enough of Austin FC. So yeah, come check out the pod if you want to know more about Austin FC. We got a lot of other cool things that we do. Little best ball fantasy league. I don't know if you guys are into fantasy sports at all, but we have our own like fan run stuff down here. So yeah, we go deep, man.
Oh, we're gonna have to hit you up. We like a good bit of fantasy.
Yeah.
Connor himself is an aficionado, I think.
Every
Nice,
year,
awesome.
every year I go for that MLS, whatever they call it, Champions League
League.
spot. It's like
Yeah.
top
Oh, yeah.
50 for 8 weeks, and one year I think I missed it out by like 3 spots. I think I was like 53rd. So
that's brutal, dude.
devastating. And then I think I quit after that for the rest of the season. I couldn't keep doing it anymore.
It broke him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, go on over, give them some love, go subscribe and get all your Austin news over there, because this was a fantastically presented, is I guess the term I'm going to use. Like every idea that you had was presented really, really well. I can only imagine your podcast is exactly the same. So really appreciate you taking your talents on over this way and sharing some news with us.
No problem, boys.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed to us. You can see the other 17 that are coming up, and you can watch the other 11 that we've already posted. So thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.